911, what's your emergency?
It's Rachel! Something's wrong! I can't see her and the trainers are running!
Who has her? Is it another person?
No, it's the orca! Kaleo won't let go, he's killing her!
In 2022, Rachel Alvarez, a seasoned marine mammal trainer beloved by her team, was mauled to death during a private training session by an orca she once considered her partner. For years, she swore their bond was unbreakable. But nature doesn't honor love. And in a flash of instinct, the illusion shattered. If this story leaves you stunned, subscribe, hit like, and share your thoughts below. Should apex predators ever be trained for human entertainment? Rachel Alvarez was 34 years old, a senior trainer at OceanWorld San Antonio, and to many, the face of the park's Orca program. Known for her composed presence and quiet confidence, she was the kind of person who seemed born to work with animals, especially whales. Her journey began as a child obsessed with ocean documentaries and culminated in a marine biology degree with a focus on cetacean cognition. Her dream had always been to build relationships with the ocean's most intelligent creatures, and she believed she had achieved exactly that with Kaleo, a massive male orca raised in captivity since birth. OceanWorld's marketing department certainly thought so. Their brochures were filled with images of Rachel and Kaleo locked in what appeared to be mutual affectionate-to-nose moments, underwater hugs, the two of them spiraling through the blue together like old friends. Her Instagram was a digital shrine to that bond, smiling selfies beside Kaleo's towering dorsal fin, birthday cupcakes for her boy, and captions that spoke of trust, understanding, and soul connection. She often referred to Kaleo not as a subject or trainee, but as a partner, her ocean brother. In promotional interviews, she spoke poetically about their synchronicity, about how they could communicate through glances and body language. But behind the curtain of staged affection and glossy marketing, concern had started to brew. Kaleo was maturing. At over 80 pounds, his sheer physical presence made him increasingly difficult to manage. Fellow trainers noticed subtle, shifts-delayed responses to commands, restlessness in the tank, more frequent lunges during shows. One colleague, who later asked to remain anonymous, recalled a moment during rehearsal when Kaleo slapped the water inches from Rachel's face. "She just laughed," the trainer said. "She always said he was playing, but to me, it looked like a warning." There was a growing unease that Kaleo, now entering full sexual maturity, was becoming less predictable. His once playful behaviors were evolving into dominance, displays, head bobbing, gate ramming, prolonged underwater stares. Still, Rachel brushed it all off. She insisted that trust was the foundation of their relationship and refused to use protective barriers or remote training tools. "If I start treating him like a threat," she once told a junior trainer, "he'll feel that." OceanWorld, for its part, encouraged this romanticized narrative. It was good for business. Visitors came to see not just orcas, but love stories between human and beast, proof that empathy could tame the wild. Rachel fit that story perfectly: calm, devoted, photogenic. But beneath the smiles and routines, the warning signs piled up. Kaleo's tank was too small, his enrichment too limited, and his instincts, those ancient primal reflexes bred in the deep, were starting to surface. "She loved that whale more than anything," the colleague said again. "But love doesn't mean safety. It never did." The red flags weren't subtle. OceanWorld San Antonio had documented multiple code red incidents involving Kaleo in the 2 years leading up to the attack, episodes of unresponsiveness, refusal to follow hand signals, and even mid-show lunges that forced trainers to halt performances prematurely. Internal reports categorized these as anomalies, but the pattern was undeniable. Kaleo was changing. In both 2020 and 2021, independent audits commissioned by regulatory observers had warned that Kaleo's tank was significantly undersized for a maturing male orca and failed to provide the physical and cognitive enrichment necessary for his psychological beta health. The reports included behavioral indicators, repetitive circling, prolonged floating near gates, tail slapping, and aggressive banging against the wall, clear signs of frustration and mental distress, in captive cetaceans. Food refusals became more frequent, a tactic orcas sometimes use in the wild to exert social pressure or protest conditions. Yet these incidents were consistently downplayed. Rachel, ever the optimist, told concerned colleagues that Kaleo was just having a bad day or needed more one-on-one time. She reportedly told one junior trainer after a near miss, "He's just moody, he'd never hurt me." Her unwavering faith in their bond became a shield dome that blocked out critical feedback and growing concern. OceanWorld executives leaned into this narrative, continuing to promote Kaleo as the park's gentle giant, a charismatic centerpiece for their flagship show. Behind the scenes, however, the tension was mounting. Experts in marine mammal behavior had long warned that captivity creates unnatural stress conditions for orcas, particularly for males like Kaleo, who in the wild roam vast ocean territories and participate in complex matrilineal societies. In the confined artificial world of OceanWorld, those instincts had nowhere to go. DrHE.com Marcus Lanning, a respected marine mammal psychologist, spoke out in a 2021 interview. "Every time an orca lashes out, it's not random. It's a culmination of confinement, of isolation, of boredom, of the slow psychological breakdown that captivity ensures." His words were ignored by OceanWorld's leadership but privately circulated among some staff. Still, the shows went on. Kaleo's face was printed on t-shirts, slushy cups, and massive park banners. Guests paid extra to stand inches from his tank, snapping photos of what they were told was a peaceful ocean ambassador. Meanwhile, his behaviors became more erratic. Trainers had to adjust routines, shortening certain maneuvers or removing others entirely due to compliance concerns. Even so, Rachel continued entering the water alone, with him brushing off any suggestion that she should take extra precautions. She was seen as both role model and risk taker, the one trainer who could calm the storm, but the storm was already gathering. Each ignored warning, each polished PR moment, each denial of instinct only fed the illusion. And one day soon, that illusion would violently collapse. January 14, 2022 began like so many others at OceanWorld San Antonio, with a quiet morning rehearsal for the park's upcoming Ocean Heart Spectacular. The trainers moved through their routines with habitual precision, prepping the animals for another day of seamless illusions. At 8:37 a.m., Rachel Alvarez entered the tank enclosure alone for an early session with Kaleo, a routine she had performed hundreds of times before. The pool was still, the sky overcast, and the only sound was the rhythmic churn of the filtration jets. Witnesses later said that Kaleo approached Rachel slowly, his massive body cutting silently through the water. He hovered near the surface, nudged her hand with his rostrum, a gesture she had often described as a sign of affection. Then, in the space of a heartbeat, everything changed. Without warning, Kaleo turned sharply and clamped down on Rachel's arm with explosive force. There was no scream, no chance to activate the emergency release. He yanked her under in a blur of black and white muscle, the pool erupting into chaos. From the deck, trainers shouted her name, some scrambling for fish buckets, others slapping the water in a desperate attempt to redirect Kaleo's attention. But it was too late. Blood spread through the water like ink in a glass, and Kaleo began what marine biologists term a death roll, a violent twisting motion used in the wild to dismember prey. Radio traffic exploded. "Code Red Trainer down," echoed through every hallway of the park. Staff raced toward the Orca Stadium, some frozen at the edge, unable to process the horror unfolding before them. Rachel's body surfaced once face pale, limbs slack before being dragged under again. Trainers hurled mackerel, blew emergency whistles, and deployed distraction nets, but Kaleo was locked in. A security guard watching the surveillance feed dropped his headset and vomited into a trash can. The park director arrived minutes later and ordered the immediate evacuation of all guests. Staff sealed off the Orca tank and began preparing sedation protocols. It took nearly 15 minutes to retrieve Rachel's body after Kaleo finally released it, and by then she was gone. Paramedics attempted resuscitation, But the extent of her injuries, multiple fractures, massive internal bleeding, a partially severed arm left, no doubt. OceanWorld's surveillance footage was seized and never made public, but those who viewed it described it as the most horrifying 10 minutes of my life. One seasoned trainer reportedly quit on the spot. The pool was drained that evening for forensic analysis, the water stained pink with tragedy. The illusion was over. The creature Rachel had trusted more than anyone else had become the instrument of her death. And in doing so, Kaleo had shattered not only a bond but the myth of control that had kept OceanWorld's fantasy alive. In the hours that followed Rachel Alvarez's death, OceanWorld San Antonio went into immediate lockdown. All shows were canceled indefinitely, public access to the Orca enclosures was suspended, and staff were ordered not to speak to media. Rachel was pronounced dead at the scene by paramedics, and her autopsy later revealed the devastating extent of her injuries. Multiple fractured ribs, extensive blunt force trauma to the head and chest, a dislocated shoulder, and catastrophic internal bleeding. It was a violent, sudden end to a woman whose life had revolved around creating harmony with the ocean's top predator. Yet when OceanWorld issued their first public statement, it carried a curiously sanitized tone describing the attack as a tragic accident during routine interaction. There was no mention of Kaleo's growing aggression, the ignored warnings, or the silent panic that had simmered beneath the surface for years. The internet erupted. Within hours, the hashtag Shut It Down was trending on Twitter, fueled by animal welfare organizations and former marine park employees who claimed the incident was not an isolated tragedy, but an inevitable outcome of captivity. Activist groups like Ocean Freedom Watch and Captivity Kills released archived footage of Kaleo displaying distress behaviors months earlier. Others posted side-by-side images of Rachel smiling beside Kaleo, juxtaposed with orca teeth marks etched into tank wall-silent testaments to boredom and confinement. As pressure mounted, OceanWorld sedated Kaleo and moved him into isolation, away from the other orcas. For weeks, the public knew nothing of his condition or whereabouts. Rumors swirled. Euthanasia, transfer, long-term quarantine. The park declined to comment. Internally, grief turned into division. Rachel's family was split. Some saw Kaleo as a wild animal acting on instinct, others as a dangerous creature that should never have been left in the care of a single person. A cousin gave a tearful interview, blaming the park directly. She trusted them to keep her safe. They fed her to a marketing campaign. Memorials began appearing outside the gates of OceanWorld, flowers, photos, handwritten notes. Fans posted old videos of Rachel performing, some praising her courage and compassion, others asking how someone so experienced could have missed the signs. Online tribute pages filled with messages of sorrow clashed with comments demanding accountability. "You can't love an animal out of its instincts," one read. Former colleagues wrestled with guilt, some speaking out anonymously about their own near misses with Kaleo. A few quit the industry altogether. The park remained eerily quiet, the once crowded amphitheater now empty, its speakers silent. Inside Kaleo's darkened tank, the echo of applause had vanished. And yet, in the absence of shows, another kind of spotlight had found its way in the unrelenting scrutiny of a world no longer willing to look away. Rachel's death was no longer just a tragedy, it was a reckoning. To understand what happened to Rachel Alvarez is to confront an uncomfortable truth. The attack was not an aberration. It was biology, unfolding exactly as science has long predicted. In the wild, orcas travel more than 100 miles per day, diving deep into open oceans, hunting cooperatively, and maintaining complex social hierarchies. In captivity, those same creatures are confined to pools barely longer than their own bodies, with artificial schedules, sterile environments, and little room for natural behavior. For male orcas like Kaleo, the stress is compounded by physiological changes that mirror musth, in elephants a surge of testosterone that boosts dominance and aggression. These hormone cycles, when paired with confinement and isolation, can push an already frustrated animal into a state of chronic agitation. Dr. Russell is ever sated. Jenna Mori, a leading marine mammal psychologist who reviewed Kaleo's history after the attack, put it bluntly. What happened wasn't betrayal, it was nature reclaiming control. Her analysis identified a constellation of warning signs in Caleo's behavioral logs: increased refusal of commands, repetitive movement patterns, gate banging, prolonged surface floating, textbook indicators of chronic stress-induced aggression. This wasn't new territory. Marine parks had seen this before, most infamously with Tilikum, the orca involved in the 2010 death of trainer Dawn Brancho at SeaWorld Orlando. Before that, there was Quito, who killed trainer Alexis Martinez during a Christmas show rehearsal at Loro Park in 2009. In each case, the story was similar: experienced trainers, close bonds, subtle warnings, and a sudden catastrophic attack. The pattern is undeniable. Yet the industry has repeatedly dismissed these events as isolated accidents-freak occurrences rather than symptoms of a broken system. Behind the scenes, behavioral compliance is often maintained through food control, withholding meals until animals perform desired routines. Social isolation is also a frequent tactic, separating individuals that don't cooperate, even though orcas are deeply social by nature. These methods create not just obedience, but resentment. They turn intelligent, emotionally complex beings into ticking time bombs. Trainers are taught to build trust, to rely on their relationships with the animals rather than physical barriers. But trust, in this context, is a fantasy that collapses the moment instinct overrides conditioning. Rachel, like so many before her, believed that love was stronger than nature. She wasn't wrong in her affection, but she was fatally wrong in her assumptions. Caleo wasn't evil. He wasn't vengeful. He was a captive apex predator whose every instinct had been suppressed, redirected, and denied. And when his breaking point came, it was swift, brutal, and irreversible. Experts warn that as long as these conditions persist, more incidents like Rachel's are not just possible, they are inevitable. Marine parks may try to control behavior, but they cannot rewrite biology. And the longer we pretend otherwise, the more blood will stain the surface of those tranquil blue pools. Rachel Alvarez's death didn't just make headline. It's reignited a firestorm that the marine park industry had spent years trying to extinguish. Within 48 hours of the attack, protests erupted outside OceanWorld San Antonio's gates. Animal rights organizations, emboldened by the tragedy, flooded social media with renewed calls to end orca captivity for good. The incident echoed too closely the deaths of other trainers in similar circumstances, and this time, the public wasn't so easily pacified. Lawmakers in California and Florida dusted off long-stalled legislative drafts and reintroduced what would become known as the Orca Protection Act, explicitly citing Rachel's name in hearings. The bill proposed a phased end to captive breeding programs and outlawed orca performances for entertainment purposes. The impact on OceanWorld's parent company was immediate, and brutal stocks plummeted 17% in 2 days, wiping out millions in market value. Investors panicked. Public trust fractured. The company scrambled to release damage control statements, but the narrative was no longer theirs to shape. Former trainers, emboldened by the outrage, began speaking to the media. Some shared first-hand accounts of being instructed to downplay or completely omit signs of aggression in behavior logs. One former senior staffer claimed, "We were told to hide signs of non-compliance, especially from Caleo. The story had to stay clean." Worse still, leaked footage began circulating online. In one grainy clip, Caleo could be seen circling his tank with visible rake marks long, bloody scratches inflicted by another orca, often a sign of violent social hierarchy disputes. The footage called into question OceanWorld's claims of a harmonious pod environment. Undercover recordings, obtained by an investigative nonprofit, revealed chilling trainer conversations, mentions of close calls, warnings about Caleo's eye contact turning predatory, and even jokes about near-death experiences that had been dismissed as part of the job. One clip captured a trainer saying, "We're all just hoping we're not next." These revelations fueled a wave of outrage. Animal legal groups launched high-profile lawsuits against OceanWorld and its corporate stakeholders, alleging negligence and concealment of known risks. While none of the suits succeeded in court thanks in part to aggressive legal defense teams and ironclad corporate rehearsed, tide of public opinion shifted dramatically. Schools canceled field trips. Travel influencers removed OceanWorld from their recommended lists. Celebrities tweeted their support for Rachel, but condemned the park's practices. The word show began to feel grotesque, like a euphemism for something far more sinister. For years, the industry had operated under a thin veil of illusion, selling the public a vision of connection, compassion, and coexistence. But with each whistleblower, each leaked video, and each tearful testimony, that illusion disintegrated. Rachel's death had become more than a tragedy, it had become Exhibit A in the trial of an entire industry. And for the first time in decades, the audience was no longer clapping. It was demanding answers. In the weeks that followed the attack, Kaleo was quietly moved to a back tank out of sight, out of memory. OceanWorld made no official announcement about his fate. Rumors circulated that he had been relocated to a facility in the Pacific Northwest, that he was sedated indefinitely, that he was simply left alone, confined in silence. Whatever the truth, Kaleo vanished from promotional materials, merchandise, and public access. The stadium that once echoed with applause now sat eerily still. The bleachers, once filled with families and school children, were cordoned off. The glossy banners that once bore Rachel Alvarez's smiling face alongside Kaleo's towering fin were removed overnight. The Ocean Heart Spectacular was canceled indefinitely, its title now a grim irony. Rachel's name lived on, but not in the way she would have wanted. She became a symbol, both a martyr to compassion and a cautionary tale about the cost of denying nature. Across forums, documentaries, and headlines, her story was retold not as a tale of triumph, but of trust tragically misplaced. She joined the haunted lineage of trainers who believed they were the exception, that love could override instinct, that a connection forged in captivity could transcend the forces of evolution. Dawn Brancho, Alexis Martinez, Rachel Alvarez, each believed they knew the animal in their care, each believed the bond was real, and each was wrong. In staff-only areas of the park, some trainers left flowers and messages near Rachel's locker. One note, taped to the inside of her wetsuit cabinet, read simply, "He didn't betray you." They did. Her family held a private memorial, declining OceanWorld's offer to host a public event. In their statement, they thanked the public for the outpouring of love, but asked for privacy and change. "We want Rachel to be remembered not just for how she died," her sister wrote, "but for what her death might prevent." Her death stirred a wave of reckoning not only across the marine park industry, but in the hearts of those who had always wanted to believe in the myth, that wildness could be loved away. Experts warned that captive orcas are not misunderstood pets or trained performers, but apex predators forced into roles their biology rejects. Dr. Jenna Mori summed it up best: "Trust is not a safety net, and love cannot silence instinct." In the final archived video of Rachel, released posthumously by a local news station, she's laughing in her wetsuit, standing beside Kaleo as he lifts his head for a kiss. The moment is so tender, so convincing, it's hard to imagine the ending. But the ending came anyway. The camera lingers on that image, the bond, the trust, the illusion, and fades to black. Because sometimes, the creature we raise is the one that drags us under.